welcome back to my channel. It's been probably almost a year now since I last did a video, and I'm not necessarily saying I am back. For now, I think I'm just gonna focus on doing monthly wrap-ups because I feel like that's not too heavy on me to film, to edit, all that stuff. So I figured let's just start with one video a month and then see how it goes from there. Anyway, let's get right to what you're here for. My first book of May was one of my most anticipated releases of this year, and that was Mistakes We Never Made by Hannah Brown. We have our female main character, Emma. She's always the one that goes into problem-solving mode. She knows what everybody needs better than they know it themselves. She's always the one that wants things to run completely smoothly. So when her best friend disappears before her wedding, she goes into crisis. She's ready to track down her best friend and go on a road trip by herself, except that her crush from high school, who is also in the wedding because they are all friends, won't let her go by herself, and he adds himself into the trip. Forced to spend time together with Finn, her crush from high school, Emma has her walls up because there were so many mistakes that they made throughout their lives that she knows if she goes back into it with him, she just can't recover from it. But suddenly, some truths from back in the day start coming up to light as they are in this forced proximity situation to go pick up their best friend that makes Emma question everything and realizing that all of those mistakes she thought had happened may have been different from what she remembers. Finn was just the cutest cinnamon roll ever. He is taking this opportunity of forced proximity with Emma, this road trip to, yes, he's there to get the best friend back, but he's there for ulterior motives because he definitely wants this chance to finally happen with Emma. And my heart constantly went out to him because dealing with Emma was not easy. I wanted to throttle her so many times because again, she really thinks that she knows what's best for everyone else, and it got on my nerves. But at the same time, I understood, especially once you know her background and start understanding why she is the way she is. It really made me feel a lot for her. And also the found family with this core group was just amazing and has me extremely excited because it looks like, I mean, I don't think anything has been announced yet, but it looks like the characters, like each of the girls that appear in this core group, are gonna get their own stories. And they could, at least the second book, if it is the second book, could revolve around the same time as Mistakes We Never Happened. This is speculation over here because we never know exactly what happened with the best friend that fled her wedding. That is kind of left up in the air. And the female main character, Emma, says at some point in the book towards the end that it's not her story to tell. And it just made me be like, huh, maybe we could be getting a series of all of these women. So I'm very, very excited about that. This one was childhood friends to lovers, right person, wrong time, close proximity, a road trip, and there's also a bit of a dual timeline whenever we go back to those mistakes that they never made. And it was such a fun read, especially now for the summer. Second book I read this month was Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. This is my first book by this author, and let me tell you, it's not going to be my last. We have Sophie, who finds out right before she's going to get married that her fiance cheated on her again. She decides to hire an objector, someone who pops up in the wedding, objects for why they should not get married, and airs out why not. So that way the bride or groom has a reason for why not continuing with the wedding. After the objector, Max, objects at the wedding. Sophie and him start getting to know each other, albeit while they're drunk, but she starts really finding out what exactly is Max's job as an objector. The only reason he does it is because he saves people from wasting their lives in a loveless marriage. And after many days and weeks pass by, he decides to get Sophie to help him at a wedding, and because he needs a female companion for this. At first, Sophie is extremely hesitant. She's like, I'm not gonna do that. And then he's like, let me explain why I need you. Let me explain the situation for why this wedding needs to be canceled. Once she finds out, she's like, I'm in. let's do this. And they also get paid afterwards for it, so it's like a win-win situation for everyone. They start working together, and very quickly they start realizing that there's a chemistry between them outside from them just developing a friendship. So they're like, you know what, a little hookup session never hurt anyone, and it's totally fine because there's no feelings involved, right? But things change when Sophie gets hired to be an objector, and it is for Mac's ex-fiance's wedding. And this is where things really start blowing up. I actually heard this one on audiobook, and I honestly think that's the way to do it. I feel like there are certain romance books or just books in general that you tend to experience and enjoy more when you hear them on audiobook. That happened to me with Check and Made by Ali Hazelwood. I feel like if I had read that book, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it, would have skimmed a lot of it, whereas I went the audiobook route and I ended up really enjoying the book. Same thing with this one. A lot of my friends were like, it was okay, I didn't enjoy it, blah blah blah, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go the audiobook route, and oh, I'm so glad I did, because it really is fun. The chemistry truly is off the charts. I was laughing, I was giggling. It was such a good time, and a very short book too. It's not that long, so I highly recommend this one if you just want like a light book to read where there's a ton of chemistry. And if you listen to audiobooks, definitely recommend it that way. For this next book, I was chastising myself for never having read this series because it was so freaking good. I think this is the fifth book in the series, and I jumped right into the fifth. Wanna know why? Because it's an age gap coach-student romance. Don't worry, for those of you who do not like taboo or extremely forbidden in that sense, she is of age. I think she's like 19 or 20. I'm not really remembering correctly. Point is, when I saw age gap and coach student, and then I started seeing some quotes of this book pop online, I was like, I'm gonna read it immediately. The same day that it came out, I was like downloading it, binged it. Oh my gosh, what a book. So we have Skylar. She's struggling with taking care of her mom, her little brother, as well as handling 2 jobs and trying to get through nursing school. Because her schedule is so busy, she never sets time for herself except for a few times during the week when she goes to train at a gym. And then we have Dominic, who is a very respectful MMA coach who starts noticing that Skylar is dealing with a lot more baggage than she's letting on. The two become really good friends, and because of the friendship that they develop, it was hard for me to remember that there was an age gap between them. The banter was there, the chemistry was there, the friendship really developed so well through the feelings that they were having for each other that it stood out to me so much. And the attraction, you can honestly feel it throughout the entire book. Again, the fact that their relationship started off as professional and then as friends, it really made the romance and the connection that they had through all of the raw emotions just feel real. And then the spice. Listen, if you want some spice in your life, this is it. This is the book for you. This one left me like, with my jaw just wide open many times as I was reading it. And then you also, if you've read this series, you probably know that there's a very strong found family in it. As I am just reading the 5th book, I didn't know, but just the little that I got was enough to make me want to read the entire series, because there's so much that you get out of the interactions that I was like, man, I wish I knew them before I started with the 5th book. Still, it never took away from reading. I never felt like I was lost. On the contrary, it really made me want to just read the entire thing. The next book I read was actually a reread, and it's interesting because my friend Shelby from Graced with Books on Instagram, we were supposed to buddy read the entire Royal Elite series as a reread because we've already read it in preparation for God of War by Rena Kent, which is part of the Legacy of God series, which is the spin-off series, the second generation series to the Royal Elite. We only read the 1st book. Technically, I think it's not even the 1st book. It's like the prequel novella introducing 2 characters that are very important for the rest of the series and the second generation as well. And that is Cruel King by Rena Kent. This entire series is set in a high school, but it's very mature. It's not young adult at all whatsoever. It's definitely new adult. And I know that a lot of people don't necessarily like it because it's set in high school, but honestly, I adored this series so much. I don't know if it's because I started with Legacy of God series and then I jumped into this one that it made me just all the more excited to read about the parents of the Legacy of Gods, you know, series, that I just enjoyed it, the entire thing. So in Cruel King, we have Levi and Astrid. Levi is like the popular kid of the school. Astrid is kind of like the quiet one, try not to make too much noise, and they've both been warned by their parents to stay away from each other, like stay away from the King family, stay away from the Clifford family, like all that stuff. But during one night at a party, they both encounter themselves because Levi lives to give his uncle, he lives to give him grief. He decides, you know what, I'm gonna make her my plaything and I'm gonna go after her, not knowing that he was gonna very, very quickly start developing feelings for her. This was such a good introduction because you get all of the characters that are going to appear in the rest of the series. You start meeting or kind of getting to know their personalities, their character traits that are really fantastic. They are all each so different. Like, you, even though there are many guys and many of the girls, you don't necessarily get lost because they are so different. I don't know how Rena does it every single time, but she is a queen. She is a queen, and I am so sad that the Rena-verse as we know it is coming to an end this June, and I'm so sad, but it's okay. It's okay. Just know that I do not exist on June 13th because that's when God of War comes out. This next book that I read was one of my favorites of the month, and that is Empire of Hate by Rena Kent. So when you read Cruel King, we have Daniel, who is Astrid, the female main character's best friend. And Astrid has a stepsister who's extremely evil, makes her life and Daniel's an absolute just misery. But towards the end of the book, you start kind of realizing that there could actually be something there. Astrid's stepsister, Nicole, she goes through something towards the end of the book that I'm not going to say because it is a huge spoiler for the entire Cruel King book. But fast forward to Empire of Hate, she is older, she's grown up, she's a single mom, she fled her life from everything that she knew, and now she got a job at a place where Daniel, the guy that she made his life a living hell, is now her boss. And how the tables turn, because now it's his turn to make her life an absolute hell. Listen, when the title says Empire of Hate, it's true. It's correct. They hate each other so much, specifically Daniel. Daniel hates her so much. Nicole, she loved him back in the day, but because she didn't know how to handle it, she decided to just make his life hell. Specifically Astrid, because that was the only time that she was getting attention from Daniel. And oh my gosh, you guys, there will be times where you will feel physically ill because the hate is so strong. But honestly, I could not get enough of it. I was here for it. I knew going in that that's what I was going to get. It was perfect. I enjoyed it. I gave this one 4.75 stars. Absolutely enjoyed it. Oh my gosh, it was chef's kiss. But skipping over two books that I read before I got to this one, just to kind of continue during the same line of the series, I continued with Empire of Lust, which is the fourth book and the final book of the Empire series by Rena Kent. Because when I was reading Empire of Hate, there are two characters that appear there where I was like, excuse me, I need to know your story. And that is Kingsley and Aspen, which are the two main characters for Empire of Lust. So Kingsley and Aspen knew each other way back in the day. I think she was like 14 years old. He was around 17 or 18, I can't really remember. They were both drunk. They had a night together. Out of that night together, Aspen ended up getting pregnant. Unfortunately, she lost her child and she grieved her daughter every single year of her life. But several years later, she ends up discovering that her daughter is very much alive and is in the possession of her father, the guy that she slept with when she was young. To Kingsley, he firmly believes that Aspen abandoned their child, and because of that, he holds so much resentment and anger towards Aspen that he decides to make her life hell. He's known to be ruthless. He's known to be the absolute devil among everyone. And they are out to destroy one another because Kingsley doesn't want Aspen to have a relationship with their daughter. But of course, there's feelings involved. There's a game of lust that they're playing that's definitely going to be their downfall. And oh my gosh. This was a 5-star for me. This was one of my top favorite. I think this is my second favorite of the month. It's still debating with another book, which I will talk about later. If you want true enemies to lovers, where they are pretty much hating each other throughout the entire book, literally, this is it. This is it. Oh my gosh, so much love for this book, to the point that mid-reading the book, I had to order a copy on Amazon because I could not get enough. Forgot that I had it right next to me. This is it. This is the discreet cover. Thought I had ordered the paperback, and instead I got the hardcover. So I'm actually sending this one to my friend Shelby because she loves this world as well as I do. She loves Rena too, and I'm getting the paperback in the mail hopefully soon. There's one specific trope that I love that I feel like not many people talk about, and that is enemies with benefits. And this book is it. This book has it to a T. It is, it's absolute perfection, you guys. It was just the best way to finish the series, going out with a bang with Kingsley and Aspen, because their connection is just unreal. They live in my brain. They literally, this book lives in my brain 24/7. Like, ever since I read it at the beginning of the month, it's stayed right here, has not left. I discovered a debut book that I'm so glad I got to read early, and that is Boarded Hearts by Ruth Stilling. I have been seeing this book around on Instagram, not as much as I would have liked, because this book deserves even more hype than it has. Cover is like the cutest little thing. And when I read the tropes, I was like, excuse me, I need you ASAP. It has reverse age gap because she's the one who's older. It has mental health representation, hockey romance, single mom. It was just everything that I wanted at the time, and it was so good. We started the story with Felicity asking for divorce from her husband, and she's just kind of ready to focus on herself, focus on her children who are in high school / kind of going to college soon. She decides to surprise her son with some seasonal tickets to his favorite hockey team, and this is where backstage she stumbles upon, literally, John Morgan, and he sees her, and it's immediate love at first sight. He's like, oh, who's this woman? And the thing is, she does not recognize him who has a reputation for being the best in hockey, being the best in the sheets, and this woman does not recognize him. He was very taken aback by this, and so obviously he's like, I need to know her. One of the major reasons why I loved this book a lot was the mental health representation, because it comes from John Morgan. It comes from the male main character, which you rarely get to see. It's why Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez is one of my top favorites, because I related so hard to Jacob in that story with his anxiety and everything else that he was dealing with. And so when we have more male main characters being the representatives of these mental health issues and being so open about them at the same time, like being self-aware about it, it was just, I just end up loving them even more. And John does deal with anxiety and self-confidence issues, and I felt everything that he was feeling deep in my soul. I just wanted to just hug him and just protect him from the world. As I had mentioned before, John immediately is in love. He loves Felicity from the start, and despite how overzealous he is over his pursuit for Felicity, their relationship also felt so organic and real. Like, if someone had told me the story in real life of how they met and everything that they were going through, I would have honestly believed it. That's how real it felt. This book really was a major page turner, and I cannot wait for the other books in the series. Just today, I signed up for the ARC for the second book because I was like, I need this. So if you're looking for a book that has like heartfelt and also a beautiful romance, perfect balance of sweet and spice, because let me tell you, the spice took me aback. I was like, that cute cover should not be this misleading with the spice, but it was. The spice was like, chef's kiss. This book is it. All the praises for it, truly. Next, I read another major anticipated release for 2024, and that is Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. If you didn't know, Catherine became one of my top favorite authors last year. She is the queen of small town romantic suspense, and if you have never read one of those, start with Catherine. You will not regret it. I have already pushed Whispers of You on so many people, and they have, this is every single time I tell them this. If you want to be hooked straight from the prologue, Whispers of You is for you. And every single time they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hooked. They read it, and it's 4.5 to 5 stars. That's how good the book is. So take this as my recommendation to you to go pick it up. Feel free to pause this video. Like, if all you get from this video is to download and read Whispers of You, I've done my job here. Going back to Fragile Sanctuary, look at this. Listen, Catherine, I was lucky enough for Catherine to send me a trope arc, so she did different trope arcs. There are currently 4 different of them. There is Grumpy Sunshine, Brother's Best Friend, Touch Her and Die, and I think the other one is Small Town. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure. Next, she sent me this gorgeous edition of Fragile Sanctuary. Look at those. Look at that. Look at that. I mean, stunning. Stunning. And if that was not enough, I also needed the people cover, the model covers. Now, listen to me. I am usually not that, I could care less for model covers. Like, they have to be really gorgeous for me to want to get them. Catherine is the one for me. Like, I will get any male or any couple covers that she does. I will get them because they look at how stunning is that. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Officially going into my thoughts for this book. How is it that Catherine always starts a series with a bang? Literally. She sets the high expectations from the start and she always meets them. I kid you not, she always does. So we have our male main character Anson, who went through something extremely traumatic during his years as a profiler. Now, because of it, he lives his life with his walls extremely up. He does not let anybody in. But then in comes Rhodes, that despite losing her family in a house fire, she hasn't let that burn away her sunshine, and she is eager and desperate to be Anson's friend. But there is someone lurking around that may not necessarily be a fan of her getting close to Anson. Listen, these two pulled at my heartstrings so much. They each have gone through the unimaginable and they have an understanding of each other that others don't, and that's why they tend to just gravitate towards each other a lot more. And of course, what started as this can only be physical, it can't be more than that, very, very quickly turns into more, especially when Rhodes seems to have targeted the attention of a stalker. When I tell you that their romance, not only was it spicy, and there's a belt scene there that sent me to an early grave. I was like, yes, please. Their connection was just absolutely beautiful to read about. I could not get enough of them, honestly. And then we also have the found family, which is something that Catherine does so well, and I loved the aspect of this found family. Because when Rhodes lost her family in a house fire, she literally had no one. She would have had to go into the system. Her best friend's mom adopted her, as well as she adopted other kids who didn't have a family. So they literally created a family between them, and they literally feel like they have been brothers and sisters like since they were born. And I cannot wait to explore that as the series continues, because the second book is going to be Rhodes' brother, Shep. So I'm very, very excited because we got some little inklings of how their connection is, like how his romance is going to be. Who is it going to be? I can't wait. Also, I cannot leave behind the hilarious grandma and her, wait for it, dick flowers. Yes, I am not going to say more. You have to read this book to find out. Also, I can believe it because I could never figure it out with her Lost and Found series. I never discovered who was the culprit. Like, I tried. I had a list of suspects. I knew whenever I read a Catherine Cowles book, I know in my brain, I know that it's going to be hard to picture who is it going to be. So I was ready. I had all of my suspects. I had their reasons. I had everything. Did not figure out. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw a video of me reacting to finding out, because I knew it was coming. Like, it was setting it up to finding out, and I was like, I need to record my reaction for this because I just know it's gonna blow me away. I did not figure it out at all, and I was like, what the heck? What did I just read? Why? What? It was, oh, I love that so much. So again, no one does small town romantic suspense quite like Catherine does. This is your sign to pick up either Whispers of You or Fragile Sanctuary, like ASAP. Man, throughout this entire video, I've completely forgotten to give ratings for my book. But Fragile Sanctuary was a 5-star, if that was not obvious. Next book I read was Meant for Her by Natasha Madison. This is the first book that I read by this author. I think I saw a reel of this with some really interesting quote that had me very intrigued. Meant for Her is a single mom, kind of forbidden romance, but I didn't really feel the forbidden as much. Like, they definitely kind of have like a secret-ish romance because it is forbidden, but I don't find it forbidden, and this is why. So we have Dakota, who on paper her life seems perfect. She has a husband, she has her daughter. Unfortunately, the husband that she knew, he slowly starts changing and changing so much to the point that he becomes a stranger to her, and then suddenly he's gone, leaving her alone with her daughters. She wants just absolutely nothing to do with him, anybody kind of associated with him, and that comes in the form of Christopher, his best friend. And all he wants to do is to be able to help Dakota, help the kids, and there's always tension between them because they cannot stand each other, especially Dakota towards Christopher. She feels like it's his, like, he's partly at fault for why her husband is gone, for never doing anything to help him out. But Dakota's girls absolutely adore Christopher so much, so they're kind of like constantly getting thrown into situations where they have to spend time together because of the girls. And obviously one thing leads to another, and you know the rest, kind of. And this is why, to me, it feels like it's not necessarily forbidden, even though Christopher does feel like it is, and he does struggle with it a lot because it's like, wait, this is my best friend widow, so he does struggle a lot with that. But anyway, this is a very enjoyable read. It's not memorable as much, to be honest. I had to like look up the book information because I have forgotten about it, but I do remember that I enjoyed it as I had read it. Like, I was mostly skimming through some parts because I was just kind of like bored at times. Still, it was entertaining. I gave this one 3.5 stars, so it's, I mean, again, I enjoyed it. It was good. And Christopher is such a cutie when it comes to Dakota's kids, which I honestly love. It's why I love the single parent trope so much, because I feel like you get to see sides to the male main character that you just normally wouldn't when there's no kids involved. I hit a point during the month where I was definitely wanting to read an angsty romance, something that made me feel a lot and not just like a light read. And typically for that, I go to my friend Brianna from Brianna Reads on Instagram. She's my go-to for angsty reads, and I decided to go with Slip of the Tongue because she said that she loved it. And Slip of the Tongue by Jessica Hawkins is a very interesting book because it does have a love triangle. Normally, I'm not a fan of love triangles, but I will say I cheated because typically in love triangles, I tend to go right to the end of the book so that I can know who she stays with, so I know who to root for. And I know that's bad because it takes away a little bit about feeling the emotions, but I need to know. I need to know how it ends. Otherwise, I will be a mess throughout the entire book. So we have Sadie Hunt. She is far from perfect, but her husband, Nathan, is the absolute image of perfection. Worships her. He's like everything that she needs, he will provide for it. He's like an absolute dream man until suddenly he just stops being that kind of man towards her. And that puts her in this position of like, is he seeing someone else? Like, what's happening? And in comes her neighbor. He has just moved in next door. Obviously, he's there to listen to her whenever she's complaining or going through a rough patch with her husband. One thing leads to another, and they definitely cross some lines. And her neighbor, Finn, kind of shows her how her life could really be with someone who genuinely loves her and not like her husband, who she really thinks he's cheating on her. So she's like, yeah, then if he is, then it doesn't matter if I do it too, because then we're both doing it kind of mentality. And as the days and weeks pass by, Sadie's marriage just keeps getting worse, whereas her relationship with Finn starts blossoming. So here we have her husband who doesn't want her anymore, and then the neighbor who will do anything for her. Wow, this book, oh my gosh, I honestly cannot stop reading. I'm pretty sure I read this in one sitting, because I was like, I need to know, like, I knew who she would end up with, but even then I felt like I needed to discover everything. And I feel like a lot of people would not know how to handle the outcome or kind of close to the outcome, but I personally loved it. I gave this one 4 stars. It was a very good read. Again, I read it, I could not stop reading. When everything came to light, I was like, oh my God, like it definitely hit me. And I can definitely see why Jessica Hawkins is one of those authors that people gravitate towards when they want an angsty read. Next, I read Holding the Reins by Paisley Hope. This is a 4-star for me. It's age gap, brother's best friend, cowboy romance, and hockey romance. Small town, workplace, kind of boss employee. You literally have a hockey player who's a part-time cowboy. It does not get better than that, honestly. It just does not. So we have Cece, who's back in the town where she grew up, and after calling it quits with her cheating fiance, she is definitely not ready for any sort of relationship, especially with Nash, the guy who used to be known to be a massive playboy. And she has her walls up extremely high when it comes to Nash, but he is ready to prove to her that he has changed for the better and he's not the same playboy that she used to know back in the day. Now they're also in forced proximity because she ends up getting a job where he is the boss. So the way that the romance officially started was through a nightstand, and that was not enough for Nash. She was like, nope, I need this girl to be mine. Because he does not want to stop things with her, he suggests that they continue. He definitely falls first and hard. And let me tell you, all the micro tropes or kinks definitely had me, because he says, atta girl. He wears a backward cap. He says things, gorgeous things, like eyes on me, good girl, grab the headboard, made for me, spread your legs. He washes her hair. I mean, and there's more that I'm not saying, so you continue to discover. But man, this book was so good. Remember when I said that I was reading the Empire series by Rena Kent? So I had read book 3 and 4. Many books later, I started Empire of Desire, which is the very first book. And remember that daughter that I mentioned about Aspen and Kingsley? She gets her story. That's how this series starts. This is where we discover a lot of like her relationship with her non-existent mom, her relationship with her dad. So this is an age gap. Dad's best friend, forbidden romance, marriage of convenience. So when the female main character turns 18, right on her birthday, she gives her dad's best friend a kiss. He rejects her. Years later, her dad ends up in an accident that leads to him being in a coma. And in order to protect the company and all of the aspects that had to do with Kingsley, Nathan Weaver, who is Kingsley's best friend, decides to marry his best friend's daughter to offer this sort of protection. For Gwen, which is the female main character, she is absolutely ecstatic about this, even though she knows that he's not doing it for the reasons that she would like. And Nathan is holding on by a thread, a very thin, almost non-existent thread, trying to hold himself back from being with his best friend's daughter. It's interesting because as I read book 3 and 4 before I read this one, I saw Nathan in a different light. I saw him in those books being kind of like carefree and happy, whereas in this first book, he's like a stone cold man, zero emotions. And it was very interesting to see how that got developed with Gwen and how he started changing. I will say, I feel like I got more from him in the other books in the series than in this one. I felt like in this one I didn't really get to see much of his personality as I would have wanted. It was one of those cases where reading out of order definitely hurt me. I did give this one 3.75 stars. I enjoyed it for the most part. I really did. I expected more from it. I expected the level that I got with book 3 and book 4. I read Drunk on You by Nikki Ash. I was lucky enough to receive a PR box. Drunk on You was exactly what I was looking for in a light-hearted office romance, but that office romance is kind of unique with a twist. We have our female main character who wants the CEO position in her father's company once he retires, but he is far from considering her because he's considering his right-hand man. Unfortunately, he feels like both of them value work a lot more than family, something that he made the mistake back in the day, and so he wants now to turn the company into a more family-focused venture, which to both Anastasia and Julian, who's the right-hand man, they're kind of like, but you are a whiskey company, how are we gonna make it family oriented? So what do Anastasia and Julian do? Unbeknownst to each other, they sign up online for fake fiancés. They have no idea who the other is. They've never met each other. And when they meet, sparks start flying immediately. They're instantly attracted to each other to the point that even Julian thinks to himself, oh my gosh, this could actually turn into a real thing and not just fake. Until they find out that they are vying for the same position, and the rivalry immediately starts between them. And let me tell you, the reader is in for a good time. This is a very short book. It's not that long. Something that I enjoyed was that despite the rivalry going on between them, Julian knew in his core that Anastasia was meant to be his endgame. When I was like, oh, that's the cutest thing. When I tell you that this man falls hard, he falls hard. This was the book that I started reading on my Kindle as I was folding laundry, and then laundry got ignored for the sake of continuing to read this book. The tension was so good, and with the rivalry going on, it just makes everything so much hotter. I just enjoyed how everything played out, and there's a vibrator scene. Let me tell you, that was good. So if you're looking for an age gap, a fake fiance, office romance with a twist, and he falls first and hard, with rivals to lovers, and a tattooed hero who sees sex toys as a companion and not as an enemy, this is it. This is it for you. This other book that I read was another highly anticipated release for this year. It still hasn't come out. It comes out in June 5th, depending on when this video actually gets uploaded. But it comes out in June 5th, if I'm not mistaken, and it is the last book in the Whitlock... Why am I getting teary-eyed? It's the last book in the Whitlock family series by Corinne Michaels. Oh my gosh. This series became an instant favorite. Forgotten Desires. Oh my gosh, it was just perfect. I could not find anything wrong with it. It was just everything. Honestly, I can't wait to have a physical copy of it so I can hug it, because it was absolute perfection. Chef's kiss. It's a billionaire, single dad, second chance, small town romance. And it's one of those books where the male main character definitely deserves the female character. Like, he is so devoted. He makes it known that he deserves her. He does everything for her and then some. Bryn had thought that she had found the love of her life when she took a spring break and encountered this guy who seemed just absolutely amazing. He seemed just as enamored with her as she was with him. Unfortunately, right on their last day, he completely ghosts her. He just leaves and she wakes up alone. And that destroys her so much to the point that she doesn't date anyone else. 10 years later, she comes face to face with him at her brother's wedding. And now that he's back, he wants her to marry him so that he can get custody of his daughter. And Bryn is the kind of girl that would not say no to anyone, especially him. So the male main character, Carson, suggests to Bryn, hey, marry me, and in exchange, I will help you with your father's very important, life-changing transplant surgery. I feel like Bryn and Carson's connection was probably the strongest out of all the Whitlock family, especially because they do have that history between them that despite it being only 1 week, there was so many emotions involved between them and so many feelings that it was impossible for them to forget and move on from. I could not stop being so giddy and awing over this romance. Like, these two characters truly deserve each other. Like, this man stops at nothing to give Bryn everything that she wants, and even things that she doesn't even ask for. He's just already moving all the plans, getting everything ready for her, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you're the cutest. When I tell you that this man will have you swooning, I mean, you will physically swoon over this man. As for the side characters, we have Layla, which is the daughter, and watching her relationship with her father was just absolutely beautiful. He is so, not only is he devoted to Bryn, he is so devoted to his daughter, and it was just absolutely beautiful to see. I would have definitely loved seeing more of that, but what I got was enough. I was genuinely happy with it. And then we also have the connection and relationship that Bryn and Layla start building. And as this is the last book in the series, I was expecting to have the Whitlock family be present in this book. And let me tell you, they were so ever present in it that I was just, my heart was very, very happy about this. Now we're going to dive into 2 books that I had high expectations for. Sadly, they were not met, which I'm very sad about. First, we have Riding the Sugar High by Leticia Larini. I had high expectations for this because the other 2 books in this series were 2 favorite books that I gave 5 stars respectively to each one. Desserts for Stressed People and The Wedding Menu. Loved those books so freaking much. So obviously I was like, yes, we're getting a 3rd book. I was very excited for it. And it was very sad. I was heavily disappointed in it. The book starts with Logan riding his motorcycle and kind of coming to a stop as it feels like he's having a heart attack, when in reality it seems like he's actually having a panic attack. Primrose is driving through the street, barely seeing anything because there are no lights, and she ends up basically running over Logan. When she gets out to check on him, she realizes what he's going through and she helps him through it. They both end up parting ways, not knowing that later in the night they're actually going to have to encounter each other again because Primrose accidentally commits a crime that she did not expect to commit. Again, it was accidental, and Logan swoops in to help her out so she does not get up thrown in jail. Now, in order for her or him to not get thrown in jail, they decide to fake a relationship so that it gives them both an alibi. Now they are forced together to be roommates in love when it couldn't be further from the truth. They could not stand each other at all. Like, Primrose is just a happy sunshine. Logan is the grumpiest man you will ever meet in your life. So here are some of my extremely random thoughts that I don't know if they will make sense, but hopefully they do. This is one of those books where I never knew exactly how to feel. This book was kind of towing the line between rom-com and angst, and it was like not deciding where it wanted to go. And I honestly just felt like I had no idea how to feel. Like, this is not a sitcom, you know, like Hannah Montana, where you would get like a sad moment and then suddenly a humor was thrown in. With this book, there were so many instances where Logan was like so mean. Like, he was constantly removing Primrose's smile over and over and over again. And during these moments, I was like, okay, if this had been an angsty read and the angst continued, then it would have been easier for me to know how to feel in those moments where he was being mean. But because it would randomly include or just get thrown in some humor, I was thrown aback and was like, wait, what? Because of how he was being, she would forgive him very easily when she should not have. Like, she should have definitely made him grovel for it because he was mean. He was so mean. And don't get me wrong, I love a grumpy man, but I felt like Logan took it too far many times. And because of that, it was just very difficult to figure out how to enjoy these scenes. And also, through the majority of the book, they spend it not being happy with each other. Like, the only thing going for them was literally their sexual chemistry, and that was it. I did enjoy Primrose's character a lot, though. Like, I felt like she brought some lightness to the story. Her character was one of my favorites with her pink hair, pink outfits. She was just an absolute treat to read about. I loved her self-confidence a lot too. It's just one of those things where it's like, if you're gonna market it as a rom-com, then stick to it. If you're gonna market it as angst, stick to it. And if you're gonna combine both, as I've seen other authors do, then choose a better balance for it, because I feel like this was a mess for me. Again, this is a book that I was highly looking forward to. I was like, I'm gonna love this. And then I didn't. Also, I felt like this book was unnecessarily long. It could have been done with 200 pages less. It dragged out way too much, and I was just like, can we be done with this? Like, I'm done. I did like the fact that we got to see the other characters from the other two books. I loved that. I always love when those cameos happened, so that was like one of my highlights for this book. I wish I would have loved this one. I did enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars. This next book was another one that I had high expectations for, and don't get me wrong, I did give it 3.25 stars. I did enjoy it, but there wasn't anything necessarily memorable of it that it stuck out to me. So we have Bex, who's in her last year of university. She's ready to just finally graduate, except that she gets thrown a hitch in her plans when she discovers that she needs 1 credit in fine arts. And the person who's teaching it is none other than the teacher's assistant, Anders Olsen, who has been Bex's crush since she was young, and he is also her brother's best friend. This was a cute debut from what I remember. I do remember feeling like there were some discrepancies with the personalities and stuff like that. That one moment they would be acting one way, and then by the next page it was like completely different, and I was like, wait, what? Like, it was just those discrepancies definitely had me like getting whiplash from them, but it was still cute and light. I will say the Bardot brothers, which are Bex's brothers, they were a standout for me, especially Gabe. So I am looking forward to reading more books in this series because they stood out to me way more than Bex and Anders did, so I can't wait for those. Finally, getting down to the last 2 books that I read this month. One of them is A Love Like the Sun by Rhys M. Nielsen. I received this arc back in April, if I'm not mistaken, from Berkeley, and I was very excited because this came with these letters, which I thought were freaking cute. Like, you were supposed to open them after reading like page 16, after a character says something, and I just thought that was such a freaking cool way to enjoy the book. So this is a childhood friends to lovers fake relationship romance. So Lanaya Thompson is someone who craves privacy, whereas her best friend Isaiah, he is known in Hollywood as being extremely famous. When Isaac gets back home and he realizes that Lanaya's dream of having her own small business is going down the drain, he decides to help by faking a relationship with him, posting about their relationship online so that way people want to go to their small town and shop from her small business. Throughout the entire book, they are extremely respectful of each other, extremely respectful of their friendship. It wasn't towards like almost the end of the book that it's when they start kind of expressing more of their feelings, and you can see kind of very early on that Isaiah is gone for her, but she is so oblivious, and he constantly tells her that. He's constantly, you're so oblivious, like, how is it that everybody knows but you? And she's like, what? And he's like, never mind. And I genuinely loved that, like, just kind of seeing, I wish I would have gotten Isaiah's point of view. I feel like that would have made the story even better. One thing I will say about this book is that through most of the book, it felt like it was dragging and it was extremely slow. And then once we passed probably the 80% mark, it was just flying through. And I just wish it had been the opposite because I felt like I needed, in those moments towards the end, I felt like I needed them to actually last longer, because it's where things start getting serious. Lanaya is dealing with some health issues that reading one of these cards helped me realize that the author had the same experience, which had me blown away and just honestly feeling for both Lanaya and the author. And again, those were the moments that I wish I had gotten more of. Unfortunately, it was kind of sped through. Other than that, it was a very enjoyable read. I think I gave this 3.75 stars. We have finally reached the last book that I read this month, and that is Everything We Never Said by Sloane Harlow. We have Ella, who is starting her senior year of high school, filled with so much grief after losing her best friend Haley in a car accident in which Ella was the one who was driving. Out of everyone, Haley's boyfriend Sawyer is the one who understands her the most and what she's feeling, and obviously the two kind of form a tighter friendship than they used to have, and because of that, lines starts to blur between them and feelings start getting involved. But Ella finds Haley's diary, and in this diary there are some secrets that Sawyer has been keeping, some secrets that could be the reason for Haley's death. Honestly, this is a dark romantic thriller that had me glued from the beginning. I did not want to stop as soon as I started it. Despite figuring out both major twists of the story very early on, it never took away from me enjoying this. Like, I was very eager to discover how it would all unravel. Watching it all was just so thrilling for me. I was beyond impressed, honestly. Like, I could not get enough. I kind of felt like I was a character in the story, watching everything from afar with how vivid everything was, and to the point that I started thinking of this as, oh my gosh, what if this were a movie? Because it was so good. I highly suggest you add this book to your TBR for the summer, because this is one of those thrilling reads that you need to read this summer. I'm telling you, I genuinely loved it. I really did. I gave this one 4.25 stars. This is one of those books where I have yet to stop thinking about, so who knows if the rating goes up. But yes, it was highly enjoyable, highly recommended. Wow, after 18 books, I finally finished my wrap up. This is insane, and I am sweating because of course I decided to come back to booktube during the summer and while I live in Puerto Rico. Why do I do that to myself? If you guys like this video, I hope you give it a like, maybe a comment, maybe a share, whatever you want to do to support this little corner that I have created that I have neglected heavily. But I am hoping to come back at least with one video a month, maybe two, depending on how I feel, especially to do book haul videos, because again, I love those. But let me know if you also like them so I can do them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!